Welcome to Charity Matters Podcast. Mr. Rogers' mother said, always look for the helpers. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing the helpers for a decade with my blog, and I'm so excited to finally be sharing these inspiring conversations with our new podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Today, our guests are Mary and Ed Ternan, the founders of the new nonprofit Song for Charlie. I'm excited to share their amazing journey and our inspirational conversation. I have to begin by just saying how excited I am to talk to you and how truly sorry I am that we're having this conversation on some levels, but I'm so thrilled that you're making this really beautiful, lasting legacy for Charlie. What a beautiful tribute of love for a really remarkable young man. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and find out how you're taking all of this and turning it into something fantastic. So thank you guys just for joining me and for being so open to talking about all of this. It's a crazy time. But why don't we start, and why don't you tell us a little bit about Song for Charlie and what your organization does and what its mission is?
Well, Song for Charlie is an organization that we started after our youngest son died in May of 2020 of fentanyl poisoning. And we found ourselves thrown into an issue that we'd never even heard about. Charlie died after taking what he thought was a legitimate prescription medication. The mistake he made was he went online and got a Percocet pill, and it turned out that it wasn't Percocet. It was a counterfeit pill made of fentanyl. So we had the double whammy shock of hearing that our son had died and couldn't figure out how. And very quickly, like the next morning, we're told by law enforcement we suspect fentanyl. And then the question is, well, what is fentanyl? What's going on here?
And how do you even spell fentanyl?
Right.
So we started doing a little bit of frantic research to just try to figure out what might have happened to Charlie. And we were shocked to find out that fentanyl and fake pills are a problem that's known in some circles. Law enforcement and EMTs and medical people are all aware of this problem and really worried about it and the pace at which it's accelerating and spreading. But the kids don't seem to understand that these fake pills are out there.
Nor do the parents, I don't think.
Right.
Nor the parents thinking that their kids would ever do such a thing. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, kids in college do all sorts of crazy things. And, you know, the tragic thing is that you don't know what's in any of these things. You have no idea. And, you know, the kids have a couple beers and someone says, hey, why don't you take one of these? You're like, oh, okay. Sounds like a great idea. And you think that they're taking an aspirin, you know, they don't think. I'm the mother.
Trusting. Yeah. They're so trusting.
Right. Having 3 boys. I mean, frontal lobe is not formed. I mean, they do things sometimes, and they just they're just naive. Exactly, Mary. I completely agree with that. So, I mean, obviously it's still so new. This only happened 7-8 months ago, not very long ago. And yet, when did you decide you were going to start a nonprofit? I mean, when did you say we have to do something? I mean, because you're still dealing with so much, and to take this on, this entrepreneurial journey of starting a new business that relies on the kindness of others is a huge undertaking. So when did you decide that you had to act?
Well, we just don't want, first we wanted to just inform and get the information out, because we want kids to know, and we want parents to know, and educators. And we just don't want anybody to experience what we're experiencing. I mean, if we had known, we could have had a conversation with Charlie, but we just it's, as all parents would feel, this is like the worst thing that you can ever go through as a parent. And we can be of some help. That's where we're going.
Yeah. And I would say that part of it is kind of how we're channeling our grief. And I think that, we've gotten some grief counseling and it's not like anybody advised us to do this, but when we dove into the problem and went online, we very quickly became members of this club. And it's not only the Grieving Parents Club, but then it's parents like us who are literally shell-shocked to find out that their kid died from something that they didn't even know was out there. Right. And then we had identified this kind of information gap where the story's in the news, but the kids don't understand. So we thought, is there something we can do? And then it's a little bit of that feeling of, if not us, who, right? I mean, we're blessed with a lot of friends, and we have a lot of connections in the education space, specifically the private Catholic space where Mary and I grew up, and all our siblings and cousins are involved. We all send our kids, so we can pick up the phone and talk to educators, and they'll take our calls. So we started networking a little bit and thought, maybe we can add some value here. Maybe there's something we can do.
That's incredible. And as someone who has walked this journey in a different path, I started a nonprofit in 2003, the year after my mother tragically died. And I will say that service heals in remarkable and magical ways. There is something that I wish the world would know. I interview nonprofit founders all the time. We have 1.7 million nonprofits in the United States. We have 30,000 in Los Angeles. And I would say 80% of the people that I have interviewed have had some sort of tragedy or loss, and they're determined if they just help one person, then they are going to take their pain and use it as fuel. And I would say 20% of the people I've interviewed have had a near miss and a wake-up call and an enormous moment of gratitude that has channeled them into starting a nonprofit. Because it's not easy work. And you guys are just beginning the journey. It's hard. Starting any business is hard, but starting a business that relies on other people's kindness is really hard. So what do you think some of your biggest challenges are, either have been or are going to be, in this journey of Song for Charlie?
Well, we had an interesting conversation last night with a foundation board member, and we recently completed our virtual launch, and we were happy to have raised some funds. And I think that the challenge getting started, it seems like, is going to be covering our overhead. And Mary and I we think right now that this is something that we want to devote our full attention to. And some of the foundation people we've spoken to have said, that's what we want. We prefer to fund foundations that are kind of full-time enterprises and not part-time. And of course, if we're going to do that, we have to cover our household expenses, right? We have to kind of walk away from other income streams and make enough money to survive.
Right.
So, when I say we're not trying to make a killing, we're just trying to make a living, and that's what the nonprofit world is about. But finding those unrestricted funds, a donor who gets us and says, you're the couple, you're the ones, we want to make sure that your overhead is covered and you can focus on program fundraising. That's what will be our challenge, I think, in the next year.
Right. And it really is one of the most fascinating things as an executive director of a nonprofit myself. Foundations and donors really don't want to pay to keep the lights on. That's just operational, is not sexy. They want to pay for the meat of the program. They want to know that they change a person's life. Keeping the lights on does do that indirectly, but it's just not, it's much harder to get those donations for operational resources. So it's definitely not not all this easy work. And that's the grindstone, right? That is definitely the challenge. So, I mean, I always say the bucket is heavy when you're doing this work. It's not like most nonprofits don't have huge staffs. Most nonprofit founders, at the end of the day, it's you. Like, this is your baby, literally and figuratively. And it's not that you can hand it to someone else and say, hey, can you just take care of this? And, well, you know, why I deal with something else. The buck kind of stops with you. So when the bucket's heavy and the days are hard and, you know, you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with starting a new business, you're dealing with life, and you still have to do your laundry. I mean, life still happens. What fuels you guys to keep going?
Charlie. And helping others. Saves some lives.
And don't you think Charlie is just totally guiding you in all of this? I mean,
Absolutely.
I just think you have to feel his presence guiding in this. And I know that for me, when we were starting spiritual care, there were so many miraculous moments of grace, things that you just can't explain, but they were signals that I was somehow on the right path, that just told me that to keep going. Have you had any of those moments where you just kind of know?
Yeah. And the way we talk about it is we did a lot of exploration at looking at different aspects of this very complicated problem. Because the issue we're dealing with has to do with, well, it's communication and miscommunication, and it's a misunderstood issue. It's a complex issue that touches internet safety and relations with China and Mexican cartels and drug trafficking and border control and kids and so all these different things. So we explored a lot of stuff, and I put it to Mary that we're not breaking down doors, but we're knocking on a lot of doors. And strangely, they just keep opening. I will keep knocking till someone closes the door and says, no, you know, you're wasting your time. There's nothing you can add. There's nothing you can do. And that just hasn't happened. The doors just have continued to open. And it really has been kind of cosmic. Some of these connections that we've been able to make have been pretty incredible.
You know, there's so many people that I talk to, and they say, you just don't understand. Like, the craziest thing happened when I was starting, and it was so crazy. And everyone has these stories, these moments, and it isn't crazy. It just isn't crazy. I mean, I shared one of mine with someone I was talking to, and I said, we were doing a Field of Dreams benefit for our first fundraiser for spiritual care. And I had run into a girl I had not seen since my Mommy and Me class. And she said, oh, Heidi, I hear you're starting a nonprofit. You know, how can I help you? And I said, oh, just if you get the word out, that'd be great. And she said, Heidi, you know, I'm Kevin Costner's assistant. I said, what? No, I didn't know that. And she said, let me really get the word out, and let's see what we can do. And, you know, I'm in the grocery store, right? It stops me dead in my tracks. And I was like, okay, Mom, I hear you. I know this. Thank you. Here we go. Let's keep going. And I think that those moments, they're comforting, and they reassure you. And I think that you're going to have a lot more of those as you move forward.
Yeah.
And make note of them. Yeah. Make note of them.
The aha moments that are guiding us. Yeah.
Because they really are there. And I think that they're there just to remind you that you're just doing beautiful work. So I know you guys are just starting. So kind of asking about impact is a reverse question. So I think I'm going to ask, like, what do you think you want your impact to be? Impact is a question, and you may know this or you may not. I know, Ed, you've worked a lot with foundations, so you do, but foundations are always asking nonprofits, tell us about your impact. And, you know, I run a leadership organization. So how do you measure leadership, or how do you measure a life that you save from a child that doesn't take fentanyl because they've been educated. So impact can be such a blessing and a curse for nonprofits. What do you think you want your impact to be?
Yeah, just putting it into kind of a stretch goal. We think that our mission is about changing a mindset. We're not pushing for legislation or tougher laws or anything like that. We're trying to reach kids and change the mindset. And so our stretch goal might be something like any 8th grader today enters college 4 or 5 years from now with the idea that they would never put a random pill in their mouth, that that's just no longer socially acceptable. And everybody knows that you just don't do that because it's not safe. Now, how we measure that, I don't know how we're going to measure that. It might just be in terms of kind of reach, being able to measure how many classes and students and website traffic and hits on our videos and so forth. That might be one way to measure it, but that's kind of the stretch goal, is to make it socially unacceptable among people from, say, 14 to 24 to take any kind of pill if you don't know exactly where it came from.
I mean, I think that is awesome. And education is definitely needed in that area. Have you guys thought about partnering with any other kind of anti-drug organizations, or looking at partnerships for other nonprofits that do something similar?
We have informal relationships with other nonprofits that we've come across. And we actually received our first grant from an organization called the Partnership for Safe Medicines, which their mandate is broader than just fentanyl, but it's about counterfeit medications across the board. We haven't thought yet about partnering with others. We'll kind of get our feet under us before we do that. And we have to kind of figure out where we fit into drug awareness in the drug awareness world, because we're really about updating those messages.
Right. I know it's really, it's so interesting as a parent. I think about even the education that my 3 boys had, and the 6-year age gap in all of them, that it started out with, years ago when my oldest, who's 25, there was a lot more messaging about anti-drugs. And then as administrations and things change, and politics and policies and new nonprofits or new issues come to light, others get pushed to the bottom, and so I do think it's something that's desperately needed, and that is, we're not seeing or hearing about it in the media half as much as we should. Although we're hearing about the tragedies, we're not hearing any more about how to prevent them or what we can do. So I think that's
right. And our hot buttons are going to be, first of all, our message is very non-judgmental. And we think that's important. So this is not the drugs are bad talk. And what's happened with fentanyl and these other synthetics that are coming down the pipeline is the narrative really has to be updated, because the typical narrative is, be careful with drugs, because if you do something too much and or for too long, you become dependent on it, maybe physically addicted one day, and you may die from it. Now we have kids in middle school, the first or second time they experiment taking a Xanax at a party, they die because it's poison. Right. So the new message is more of a warning. We want to tell kids, you have to navigate this new drug use landscape that's out there because of these synthetics. There's things that are sold under false pretenses and that are very deadly, and you won't have a chance to get addicted. So that's the education piece that we want to do. And we feel terrible. These kids today with COVID and everything else, all the other stress they're under. It's just, we feel sometimes like we're piling on with more bad news. But we really try to come across as, this is really, you have to educate yourself about this new issue that's out there, and take care of one another and protect one another from this new poison that's been put on the market.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So how do you think you're going to disseminate your program? Have you thought about how it's going to be are you going to be partnering with schools? Are people going to get brochures or information?
Well, we have, as Ed said earlier, a strong relationship with the Jesuit communities. So we're working with Santa Clara, where Charlie went to school. We did a documentary that should be released on Charlie's story March or April. And so we're going to use that video and share it with other Jesuit universities and high schools. And we've got the okay from Loyola, University of San Diego.
We're working with Jesuit
high schools in Arizona. Yeah.
Those are kind of our low-hanging fruit. People who will take our call are our friends in the Jesuit education community. And the partnership is kind of like what we know is everything we've learned about this, the new landscape created by fentanyl and fake pills. And what the schools know is how kids take information, how they absorb information. So we're going to learn from each other. We have kind of an academic advisory team put together. We'll learn from each other. And then the idea we think is short videos, narrated, animated videos that we'll push on our website, that we'll co-create with some schools that they can use for themselves. We think kids teaching kids is a really good way to do it. So if we can get the schools to say, we would say maybe here's a learning guide and have the kids do their own projects and create their own presentations and so forth that they would share with classes. So we want to get the kids engaged. Our 3-point plan is basically go where they are, speak their language, and get them talking. And we're working with schools to figure out how we can do that.
I love that. I run a Catholic youth leadership organization as my day job. And I work with 122 elementary schools and 31 Catholic high schools. And we do peer-to-peer model where children teach children. I mean, we serve 3,500 kids a year, but we only have 3 employees. And our kids, our college kids train our high school kids, and our high school kids train our middle school kids. And the model is incredibly effective because especially when you're talking about a topic like this, they don't want to hear it from a teacher. They don't want to hear it from a parent. They want to hear it from someone older, hipper, cooler than they are. And so I think you are spot on with your 3-step program. For someone who's been doing this for almost a decade, and seeing how effective teaching leadership is this way, I think you can definitely have the same impact with the peer-to-peer model. So I think that that's awesome. I think you're definitely on your way, and I'm happy to be a resource for you as well as you.
Thank you.
We can have an off-air conversation, side conversation about all of this because I have some ideas for you as well. So great. I know you guys are in the middle of just dealing with so much right now. I mean, grief can be crippling and unfunctioning and can shut down every system. And it's sometimes hard to restart when it hits. And even to do the most basic functions when grief hits is just, it's debilitating. And so I have such admiration that you are in the middle of grief and taking on this journey, this entrepreneurial journey. But what life lessons have you guys learned in the past few months? There's so much that happens, and when there's loss, there's rebirth, and when there's loss, there's growth. And it's the only upside. But what do you think the lessons that you've learned from this have been? Mary, what do you think?
Well, being a Catholic and ministering to our sick and the elderly and the dying for the last almost 30 years at Holy Family as their gerontologist. I was always there walking with our people in the last stages of their life or illnesses. And what it's really given me is just, again, really appreciating every second because life has its twists and turns. And if we don't have our faith and to ask God and Charlie to walk with us during these very, very difficult times from hour to hour, then why are we here if we can't love and care for one another? And our support from our friends and our family have been just extraordinary. So that's given us the light to kind of get out of bed and just tackle the day and what would Charlie want us to do, and to do it with dignity and grace.
Well, when you think about, you have given your life for decades to serve other people. You have lived a life of service long before Mary, long before starting Song for Charlie. You have lived this life. And I think that sometimes the grace, you don't even realize that now it's all coming back. Those gifts you've given of yourself so completely for so long. And now everyone's coming to rally to give back to you and to help launch this effort. So I think that there's something so beautiful in that. And not that you've ever given expecting anything, because that's not at all who you are. But that's the beauty of giving. You don't give with an expectation.
Right.
You give to
do. Right. And to walk the walk, and to, I think of the Blessed Mother and been asking for her help, because, she knows what I'm feeling as a mother. So I think that's really important to kind of channel into that, and just making time and space for prayer and continued prayer, and just again, walk the walk. This is what we're supposed to do, to share our love and care for others and take care of ourselves and be very caring to ourselves and listen to our intuition and hearts and souls of what we need to do every day. It can change from day to day, but the most important thing is, just walking the walk.
Amen. Ed, what about you? What do you think? How do you think these past few months have, besides rocked your world, changed you?
I think about priorities. I think about that old, and we're dating ourselves now, but that old Steve Martin comedy routine where he talks about getting small, right? And that, I really am I'm getting small. I'm focusing on what's important, one day at a time, one step at a time. Knock a few little things off our list that keep us moving forward, but really focus on our other two kids and our families and our relationships, and really set the priorities. That's kind of how it's affected me. They say don't sweat the small stuff, but at the same time, the small stuff is important, and that's what we're focused on now.
That's beautiful. That is truly, truly, truly beautiful. Well, I think that the world is feeling lost in different ways, not as the enormity of your loss, but the world is reassessing exactly what you're saying, what's important. And I think that we've all had a little more time and space to pause and reflect on that and think about how important what we have is, and these moments of gratitude, even in loss, why the planet is experiencing loss right now, from their children going to school or seeing their family or their friends. We're having this, international loss, and trying to find gratitude and grace in all of it. I think you're certainly showing us how to do that. Most definitely. I think you're a living example of how to live and how to funnel pain into something so beautiful. What a beautiful legacy. I am 100% sure that Charlie is with us right now and smiling down on all of this, and will continue to bless you on this journey. And I'm really excited to keep following where you're going. But tell us where we can support you, where we can follow you, where we can donate, where we can learn more. Where can we find?
Yes, songforcharlie.org is our website. We have an Instagram page that's thankfully being run by 20-somethings, so they know what they're doing. And that is Song for Charlie with the number 4. And Instagram. We're just starting our Twitter page. So you can find us online. You can support us online, and you can reach us there for more information. Send us an email if you want to help, volunteer, ask questions, get involved, or make a financial donation. That's where you can find us, songforcharlie.org.
Perfect. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your journey, for taking this and, like I said, turning something very difficult into something really beautiful. And what a gorgeous legacy you're leaving, and how many lives Charlie and you are going to change with getting this message out. So thank you so much for sharing it. And I'm really excited that we got to talk today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you for your time and your prayers and your love.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I really enjoyed talking to our guest today, Mary and Ed Ternan, about what it takes to start a nonprofit that changes people's lives. I think Ed's comment about getting small and focusing on what's really important, on our families and our relationships, was so inspiring and true. To learn more about these modern day heroes and entrepreneurs, or if you'd like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we'd love it if you shared this with your friends and family, because together we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time.